joined by Anti-Flag. We have the drummer Pat Thedick on the phone. How are you today, Pat?
I'm very good. I'm sitting at home just waiting to go on tour for our new record that comes out at the end of May.
Well, it's an exciting new record, American Spring. We're going to be talking all about it. But if you could kind of take us back, first of all, and let us know how you and Justin, formed the band. I know that was back in '88. Who were some of your musical heroes, growing up? Who inspired you to want to play drums and form a band? And tell us how you got together with Justin.
Well, I wanted to play drums way before I was even with Justin. My dad had been a drummer, and when he had sort of given it up and was very disenchanted with the whole thing because all his friends were alcoholics or drug addicts who he played music with. So he didn't want me to play music, but I found the drums and I just kept being drawn to them. So ever since I was a little kid, I wanted to play. I was never any good, but I always wanted to play. And then Justin and I played soccer together when we were really young, and we both realized that we didn't really fit in anywhere. And so we found that we both liked to play music. Justin is actually a much more talented musician than I am. He can play drums, he could play bass, he could play guitar, he can do a little bit of everything. But because I can only play drums, then he switched over to guitar so we could play music together. And we've been playing the music for probably 30 years now together, maybe 28 years together now, just him and I. But then the band, actually, we traveled around the U.S. a little bit and then ended up in San Francisco. Then the money ran out and we came back home. And in like '94, we started playing with Andy, the bass player, and then we just started playing then, and things just started to work for us.
Well, I know those were exciting times, coming up through the '80s with the whole punk rock scene and so many labels and bands coming out and exploding. The
interesting thing about for us in the '90s was we were in Pittsburgh, and it was the late '80s, early '90s, and grunge was really big, and nobody cared about punk rock. So the community of music that we grew up in, we were just doing it as a passion, and nobody thought that anybody would ever care about punk rock again. And so there wasn't all this pressure from record labels and all that stuff because they'd all died out in the late '80s, and nothing really started happening again until the mid '90s, at least in Pittsburgh.
Sure. Well, I know if you could tell us about, putting together your initial album. I know it came out in '96, Die for the Government. What was kind of the common thread with you guys playing, and, how did politics or social change or just an awareness of what's going on around you, play a big role in the band and your lyrics?
Well, yeah, Justin's dad is, and his mom as well, but his dad's an Irish immigrant. So he had moved to the UK and then come to the US in the early '60s. So he was very aware of the IRA and the fight with the British, and so there was a political awareness in his family from that point of view. And so politics and activism were a major part of Justin's growing up. My story is a little bit different because my parents were my dad was a teacher and very right-wing, and very Fox News-centric, but even before Fox News was around. But the thing about my dad is that we had discussions about things, and he allowed me to have my opinions, even though they were very different from his. We always would give each other the space. He had ridiculous ideas, and he knew I thought they were ridiculous, and I think he thought my ideas were ridiculous as well, but we were able to discuss them and talk about them. But so those things were going on, and then when the first record that we recorded, neither of us, or I specifically, couldn't play very well. So we went into a recording studio before that, and it was a complete disaster, and it was a mess. So what we decided to do was rent the musical equipment or the recording equipment and put it into the bass player's house and record that record in his basement. And we did it all ourselves. We didn't really know what we were doing. We just knew that you put a microphone in front of a kick drum and you hoped you got good sound. And that's how we recorded that record. So it was very much figure it out as you go, and it's amazing that people are still talking about it now based on the way we recorded it and who we were at the time.
So complete DIY, kind of learn it as you grow kind of thing. So talk about how the band evolved, over the years as far as getting better at songwriting and production and performing.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is we've just gotten better. When you play 120 shows a year for 20 years, you get better at what you do. The recording experience is still, we sort of put a mic in the kick drum and you hope that it sounds good, and if you don't, you move it a little bit and hopefully that sounds good. So we are definitely a product of the do-it-yourself recording industry and all that, because that was just coming online in the mid-90s. Before that, you had to go into a real studio and had to have all this equipment, and we just had some ADAT recorders that we rented from a music store. But then, as we've gone on as a band, we've been playing a lot of shows because that's what we were told to do when we were young. Is they said go out and book tours and go do that. So we did that. So we were playing all these shows, and each time we played, we understood how to play our instruments a little bit better. And then each time we rented the the recording equipment to record, we got a little bit better at that. And now we have our own studio, and we're still not very good at it, but we can do it. And it's much more fun to be in control of the whole process and that's how I feel.
Sure. Well, I know you guys got on the Warped Tour in 2000 and obviously been veterans of that. What's it like to have that camaraderie, to, form friends with other bands on the road and kind of, grow together and share ideas?
Well, that's where we came from. We were really lucky to be the little kids in a sort of established music community in Pittsburgh. So that experience of bands not trying to outdo each other and not trying to step on each other to get ahead, but the realization that we're all trying to do the same thing, and it's not a zero-sum game. We can all get a show and play a show. It's not if I get a show, then that means you don't get a show. So that idea, and then you're right, going into the Warped Tour situation where every band can have a great show that day. It's not if you have a great show, everybody else has to have a shitty show, and that fit right in with our view of how music is. That it's not a competition. It's an art form, and it's something better than competition. But the interesting thing about Warped Tour is that it progresses music and it could either be in a good way or in a bad way, because every band is watching all these other bands. On any day at Warped Tour, you could see, 50 bands play in a day. And when you watch each band, you see what they're doing that works and see what they're doing that doesn't work. So that very much is like an incubator, a microwave oven of incubators, because it moves things so much faster in a certain direction. Whether that direction is necessarily good or not, I don't know. But it definitely makes bands learn very quickly what works as a band and what doesn't work.
Sure. And I know the band is quite active with a lot of causes, and of course the Warped Tour has a lot of respect and, provides a platform for a lot of these organizations, but everything from PETA to Greenpeace to Amnesty International. Talk about why it's important for an artist, to stand for something and help spread the word and enlighten people to some of the challenges or causes that are out there.
Well, I don't know whether it's an artist's responsibility, but for me, it makes me happy. It's important to me and the guys in the band. It's important to. It doesn't have to be that way, but for us, it's important. And for when we grew up, I grew up in a suburban school that didn't have access to ideas like PETA and didn't have access to human rights like ideas like Amnesty International. It just wasn't happening in my school, and none of the teachers were talking about it. None of the parents were talking about human rights and freedom and justice and what those things meant, and animal rights. And then when I went to the rock shows, those ideas were there and they were being talked about, and it was an eye-opening experience for me. And I was like, wow, why this is a whole new world of discussion and ideas that I wasn't exposed to, and that was important to me. And I want to make sure that that is available to other people as well. I know that the world has changed in the last 20, 25 years or whatever, but I still think that people need to be exposed to those ideas, and if they are exposed to them and they're like, yeah, I don't care about that, that's fine. I'm fine with that. But I think there are people that are exposed to those ideas and say, wow, there is something here, and this is something that's worthwhile, and we should either organize to maintain these things or organize to make things better in any of these directions.
Sure. Like you say, you're not really there to push anybody on anything, but just create awareness, and hopefully people attract to what speaks to them.
For sure, and I'm vegan and straight edge, but everybody should live however they want to live. It's not my job to tell anybody what they should do, but those ideas are important to me, and if they connect with somebody else, then that's great, and we can talk about that and organize. But I'm not there to tell anybody how they're supposed to live their lives.
Sure, and I know you guys are often controversial by stating whatever you believe in, and I know during 9/11 you guys got some pushback and stuff on talking about the war on terrorism and all that. What's that like to get that kind of response sometimes to your music?
Well, it's twofold. One is that it's uncomfortable because especially after 9/11 there was such a jingoistic bullshit rah 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 America thing going on that in an environment like that there's often violence, and so in that sense it was scary to be a outlier that didn't fall in line with the American view at that time. But also being who we are and knowing that and being around as long as we've been around, we realize that those pendulums are always swinging, and that sooner or later people are going to realize that dropping bombs on people's heads is never going to solve the problems, and that these bad decisions the war is always going to come home, and people are going to realize that sooner or later, because we look at things like the war in Iraq, and how Bush was like, we really need to go into and liberate the Iraqi people from Saddam Hussein, which Saddam Hussein is an evil man. There's many evil men in the world, but that is ISIS is a direct response to that. And when you think that you can bomb people into democracy and shoot people into democracy, it doesn't work that way. And we said that when we were young, and we've been vindicated over and over again, unfortunately, because the powerful continue to think that they're going to make it better through violence, and it never works out.
Now, I know you guys are now signed with Spine Farm, the big European label, and American Spring is the new album coming out. Talk about the new record and some of the things you're talking about, what you're most excited about achieving with this recording.
Well, this record, we recorded this record out in L.A. The last two records we did in Pittsburgh, and we produced and recorded them ourselves. So we were looking to to branch out a little bit, and we felt as though we felt comfortable again as a band, and we said, okay, we can take some risks now because we've reestablished out who we are, and so we went out to L.A., worked with a producer named Kenny Carkeet, who is in the band AWOL Nation, and he was a big fan of the band and wanted to produce, and we thought it was a great fit. And then we recorded these songs, and the songs are a little bit darker than a normal Anti-Flag record. Number 2 was going through a pretty sketchy divorce, and my father died right before we recorded the record, and just those experiences made for a darker record than normal. But we are still dealing with the issues of freedom and justice, and talking about ideas that we feel as though aren't really being discussed in the mainstream media, like the idea that drone strikes are equivalent to suicide bombs. They're both weapons of terror. You don't know when they're coming, and we feel as though that terrorism is bad, yet we're perpetrating terrorism on people all over the Middle East right now with drone strikes. And these ideas aren't in the mainstream dialogue. They're just on the periphery, and we need more people to be talking about them.
Well, I know you guys were all set to perform at the Republican National Convention in 2008, and obviously Rage Against the Machine took the stage and riled the officials up. But we're about to enter a new.
That was a fun day. That was an awesome day.
We're about to go through the circus again of another presidential race. Tell us what that day was like, and what it means, or why it's important to stand up, whether you protest or endorse something.
Well, it's always, you always have to have somebody standing up. There's always got to be a voice that is out there, and it doesn't have to be mine, and mine isn't any more valuable than anybody else's, but somebody's got to be standing up. That particular day was awesome because the plan was we were going to play, and as soon as we were going to play 2 or 3 songs, and then we were going to let Rage use our equipment, because we knew if they set up their equipment, the show would be shut down right away. So they brought them in cars and clandestinely brought them into the site, and as soon as they came on site, the riot cops all pulled up, and they shut the show down. And then the riot cops came in and cleared the area, and it was an amazing experience, because you realize that freedom of speech really doesn't exist. And it was also an amazing experience because, freedom of speech doesn't exist because if you're saying something that goes against the powerful, they will always shut you down. And then also the fact that the powerful are always afraid of people coming together, because they know that if people come together, they can really change things. And so seeing that in action was an amazing experience for us. We knew it from our discussions with people and how we've seen history, but to actually experience it, that as soon as people come together, the powerful get scared and send in violence, and that's how it always works. And the only way to combat that is to be peaceful and have more numbers that they can't beat up everybody. And that throughout history, that's been the only way that revolution has happened and change has happened and been successful, not like we have in Syria right now, where change has happened and then it's gone into a quagmire of violence.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are musicians. You're rock bands that wanted to play and say what you felt, and the fact that you were shut down before you even had a chance to speak, is quite disturbing.
Absolutely. And the other thing that was fun about that day is then, so that was the outside festival show, and then there was a proper arena show there as well. And outside of the show, inside, the kids had congregated, and they were, and the riot police had come in with the horses, and they were putting on their gas masks and putting on the gas masks for the horses, which, as we all know, once the gas masks come out, it's going to get ugly. So seeing a couple hundred young people singing the national anthem, which I'm not a big fan of the national anthem, but that juxtaposition of the song talking about freedom and justice in the face of these riot cops moving in with tear gas and masks on and clubs ready to beat them up because they wanted to express their freedom and justice, in their rights, it was an amazing experience for me.
Sure. And that brings us to, again, any advice you have to, young artists, young creative people, young people with passions and ideas today? Obviously, the business is constantly changing, and you don't necessarily have the perfect formula for that. But as far as expressing yourself where you have your own unique voice, or the perseverance it takes to be in this business as long as someone like you have, what advice do you give to those young creative people?
Well, my advice is always to do it yourself, because there's always somebody who's going to tell you no, or you need to do it slightly differently, or maybe if you just didn't talk about that, you might do better. And the answer is always no. This is what we do, and if you don't like it, we're going to do it ourselves. And having that passion is important. But the other thing that we're very lucky to have is that we have the four of us in the band who have been together for 20 years, but we also have people around us who have been with us for 15, 20 years as well, and that is very important, to have people around you who also feel the same way and are willing to get your back when you have something that you really believe in.
Well, thank you so much, Pat. We're very excited about the new album. Can't wait to see you out on the road, ripping it up. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It was great to chat.